So I thought I'd do a few things. I'm going to try to get you guys out of here on time, but in talking to Carl a little bit about the group and about what I might be able to discuss, it seemed like it'd be worthwhile to give you a few updates on the economy. I know you guys hear from a lot of economists, so I'll try to be relatively brief with that and just give you what the perspective looks like from the state level at least. I do want to talk a little bit about the state budget, and I think people have some amount of understanding, but I actually found it very useful back in the fall when I first was sort of stepped through, how did we get here? How did we get to a place where, we solve a $9 billion budget gap, and then within 6 months we're looking at another $2.8 billion. And I just think it's useful to have a quick view of that, so I'll try to do that. And then I want to really focus on creating jobs. And I've been sort of operating with a chronological framework for that lately, where there's what are we doing in the short term? And I think that's mostly about, at least in my job, what can we do in the legislative session? What were the governor's ideas that certainly we were involved in helping her create for what we can do to help stimulate investment and create jobs sooner rather than later. In the medium term, I really think about that in the context of the Department of Commerce and our mission and the way we're trying to stand that department up and refocus it on the mission of growing and improving jobs. And then for me in the long term, it's about what are the economy-wide trends that are out there that offer us a chance to disproportionately grow Washington State's economy over the next 5, 10, 20 years. And I'm sort of socializing my ideas on what those trends might be, so I'm here to give you my theories on that and get your feedback, because I think that's important, because if we can agree on what we think some of those trends are, then I think the opportunity is to gradually shape our state policy to really position our state to benefit from those trends over time. So that's the reason why I think it's important to discuss what are those trends that we might do that with. And the last thing I'll do is just recap some of the investments that at least my agency has been involved in that have gone on here in the Tri-Cities for the last couple of years, just in case folks aren't aware of that. So that's our agenda. So turning to the economy first, this is a view of the U.S. economy. We don't get quarterly data on the state economy, unfortunately. But what you're seeing is the last 3 or 4 years of the U.S. economy, and the picture's, no surprise to anybody. I would note that the last bar is actually Q3 of 2009, where the U.S. economy grew at just over 2%, and actually in Q4 it was up over 5%. So, from a GDP perspective, the economy has turned around. It is growing again. The issue for us is, of course, that employment lags economic growth for a lot of reasons. People get out of the workforce and get discouraged, then they get back in when they see things improving. Employers don't hire full-time people back the minute they start seeing demand return. They tend to hire temporary folks and wait to see if it's real or not. And so even though the GDP, which is a nice conceptual term, is going in the right direction, a lot of us on the ground aren't seeing the employment picture change dramatically yet. Although on things like temporary workers, you are seeing a rebound in temporary worker hiring even inside the state. So even while our unemployment figure is still moving the wrong direction or bumping up and down, I would say things like temporary employment are beginning to reliably pick up. And we've lost probably 5% of our employment base in the state has lost their jobs in the last 15 to 18 months. So it's been a tough period. This is actually a map. It's an eye chart, so nobody can see this. Sorry about that. But it's a county-by-county view of unemployment. And I think the main points I wanted to make is, while our overall unemployment rate in the state might be 9.5, 9.7%, it's really an aggregation of areas like the Northeast and Southwest that are really struggling with unemployment rates in 15, 16%. I mean, I hadn't seen the February numbers until I put this talk together, and there's some counties in the Northeast that have unemployment rates over 15%, and that's just official unemployment. That's not underemployment or some of the other things that are also part. And then there are places like you guys where they're relatively better off. Your unemployment rate estimate in February was 8.3%. I know that's a little bit of a squishy number because county by county it's a little tougher to tell, but it seems like you guys are a relative bright spot. So I'm glad that there's some out there, and in talking to Carl some, I think that the community feels that way, which is great. And then this is the last one that I had about unemployment in the economy. This just shows the year-over-year change in Benton County and some of the surrounding areas. And you know, at first I was like, hey, Walla Walla, it actually got better in Walla Walla. Actually, no, that's wrong. The person that put this together for me inverted the numbers, so even Walla Walla's unemployment rate is going up. So the February 10 is on the left bar and February 9 is the right bar. So it's, you know, it's basically continued to deteriorate pretty much everywhere at some level. But I wanted to offer a brighter note about the state of things. And this is another eye chart, so just listen to me and I'll try to recap it for you. You know, our mission, the mission we've settled on for the Department of Commerce is to grow and improve jobs in the state. And the metrics that we are going to look at to assess how we're doing there are essentially employment growth, average wage per job, and then growth in average income per job as really the key metrics relative to other states. You know, we'd love to be able to, and we will look at other parts of the world too, but the numbers that we can get reliably are versus other states. And so one of the things we did in the last few months is to try to get a sense for where are we as a state compared to other states if you look at the last 5 years or so of performance. And the good news, and it probably wouldn't surprise most people here, is our state economy has performed very well compared to most other states in the country in the last 5 years. And so what these are showing you is essentially employment growth over the most recent 5 years, per job wage in 2008, and then growth in per job wage over that 5-year period. Washington State versus other states, a set of benchmark states that we've got, and then overall in the country. So I'll make these slides available later, and folks are free to look at them if they want. But the short answer, the short summary is our state economy, you know, had been performing super well going into the recession. And I don't have any reason to believe this recession has disproportionately impacted Washington State. In fact, our state unemployment is done a little bit better than the nation as a whole. So we, you know, it speaks to, you know, we were talking earlier about the strengths that we have as a state. And I think we have a ton of strengths. And so I don't think I would have accepted this job for some states in the country, but Washington State is a place where I feel like, you know, I have a great job and a chance to really work with a lot of folks in this room and around the state to go achieve our potential. So we're well positioned, I think. This kind of washed out as a slide, but now I want to segue to the budget story a little bit. And the first part of the story is before the session even started, I want to wind you back to last January of 2009. And the first interesting thing is before the session even started, before the recession and the session even started, there was a $3 billion problem in the state's budget, largely driven by increasing costs of health care and education and some of the basic services that the state delivers. And so before we even hit the recession, we had issues that we were going to have to grapple with as a state in our budget. And then, of course, the economy cratered. And what was a $3 billion problem, pretty big problem, I mean, it's 10% of the total budget problem already, turned into a $9 billion problem. And that all happened essentially, I mean, because our economy in the state fell off a lot later than the country as a whole. I think a lot of legislators showed up last session not really realizing what was going on. And in the course of that session, you know, came to grips with a $9 billion budget gap that they had. And so they solved that in 3 big chunks. They cut programs to the tune of $3 billion. They got Recovery Act money from the federal government that roughly solved another $3 billion. And then they found one-time sources. They swept a lot of capital funding programs, including a number in our agency that we love. And they did one-time things essentially to cover the other $3 billion. And they got it done on time. They were out of the session. And you know, our state's credit rating has held up very well in this recession. And so I think, you know, they got it done and they got out of session on time. And they turned things over back to the executive branch to try to implement all this and keep government functioning. So, so that's what happened last session. But then the problem was, you know, the economy continued to deteriorate. And so that budget, that solution was built on a revenue forecast that immediately began to come up short. And essentially, the June forecast was $686 million short of what the budget was built on. The September forecast added another $250 million. The November forecast, another $750 million short on revenue that budget was built on.